This is Find Your Flow, a show about navigating the complexities of life and business through the lens of curiosity. I'm your host, Angelique, and I bring together experts to deliver responsibly curated conversations and perspectives that aim to progress people and the planet. So a popular topic circulating today is the critical interplay between kindness and resilience in the workplace. Many have found that a work environment rooted in kindness and resilience not only fosters personal growth, but also cultivates a thriving and successful business. Go figure, right? Today, we have the privilege of speaking with Neil Schambra Stevens, an esteemed business coach, author, and an expert in the field who specializes in empowering individuals, particularly creatives, strategists, and rising talent in brands and agencies. His approach is rooted in the belief that true success lies in cultivating a work environment where both that kindness and resilience can not only coexist, but harmonize. And today we'll learn some valuable insights on harnessing momentum to unlock untapped potential and propel businesses towards greater success. So hailing from a houseboat in Amsterdam, we have Neil Schambra Stevens. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I was listening to that intro. That's something that you wrote. I didn't write that, did I? You wrote a lot of that. That's really nice. I like it. Thank you.
Yeah, spice things up a little, right?
Absolutely. That's really good. Good start.
Thank you. Well, I'm so happy to have you here. So Neil and I, just to give everyone a little bit of a background, Neil and I met through a mastermind course. I was then a client of Neil's for a while, a coaching client, and had such a great experience. I'm really, really grateful to have you on Find Your Flow today. And I think just to kick folks off, that was a synopsis of what you do. So tell the audience more about your background and what brought you to the work that you're doing today.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you for having me. I think that my journey really started some time ago. I was working in brand marketing. I'm originally from the UK, but I've lived in Amsterdam. I have actually lived in Raleigh, North Carolina for a few years, and also in Italy. And along the way, I've worked for some interesting brands, some quite significant brands like Levi's, Converse, Vans, Polaroid. Amazing brands, amazing people. But I came to a point probably 3 years ago, just before the pandemic, when I realized the thing that really excited me, that really motivated me, was people and developing people. And in particular, not at the executive level, but more in the middle management. I think they were largely unheard and unseen and unrepresented. And so I developed some coaching programs, and from the area that I'd worked in, I really, as you said in the setup, I really wanted to work with creatives and strategists and marketing folks. And my why, in a simple line, is to enable people to be seen and heard and valued in the workplace.
That's incredible. And yeah, to echo that, I know in the work that we had done together, I felt just that. And, I think a big takeaway from our experience that you helped me with was discovering and enjoying the process. And that's a sticky place to be, but that has been a game changer for me in, this past year. And I think that moves us to the next question is, like, when you're working with folks in this space, what are some of those common challenges that you see, or are there some trends that you see across the folks that you're working with when it comes to kindness and resilience?
I think a universal thing is that people are pretty tough on themselves, right? I think that, unsurprisingly, I think the biggest obstacle that we have in terms of our growth and our development is usually ourselves and getting stuck in our heads. And so what I try and do, like a lot of other coaches and coaching practices, is look at the things that the passion points, look at the things that excite us, look at those obstacles and sort of toggle between the two and figure out how to push people further with their passion, with their vision. Sit with those obstacles, just unpack them, not always try and solve them and make them go away. Some of them are really deep rooted, but to see the potential in people and see the potential in themselves. And one of the fun things that I enjoy as part of the process is really that moment when you hold up a mirror to someone and say, "This is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm hearing. Do you recognize that?" And that aha moment, that breakthrough moment, when people go, that's the magic. That's when the work really truly begins. And I always say that, it's drawing things what's already inside somebody. I don't teach, I don't tell people what to do. It comes from within. I think that's the thing that really satisfies me. Seeing the true potential of somebody and enabling them. I mean, that's my sort of my life's work right now. That's why I have a very simple life and I live on a houseboat. I'm very fortunate. I live on a houseboat in the middle of Amsterdam, and this is my work. This is what I do.
Yeah.
And to your point about some of the commonalities, I mean, I have a lot of clients in the US across, all 3-4 major time zones, clients in the UK, Europe, Asia. The similarities is quite striking, particularly at that level, and particularly within the creative industry as well. So
that was going to be my next question. Is I was curious, we can be our own greatest critic, but when it comes to left brain, right brain, I was wondering if you see that more commonly with creatives than you might with business folks. I mean, I think everyone struggles with it, but is there something about the creative background that we just kind of get into our own heads a little more?
I mean, I think not always, but I think, a lot of creatives are, they occupy the full spectrum of extroverts, rock star designers. But you also get a lot of like ambiverts and introverts as well. And I think what people struggle with a little bit is actually where they're pouring their heart and soul into something. That the critique of the work, people find that quite hard. This is my idea. This is my passion. And I try and help simplify things a little bit. Like, if it has a brief, it's advertising. If it doesn't, it's art. And quite often, people are coming in going, they got this idea, and you're like, you've pretty much written the script to like a movie here, and it's a 30-second commercial for toothpaste. I'm exaggerating, but like, they over-index a lot of the time. So I think enabling people to have that sort of detachment, that it's not personal, to build in kindness for themselves, and really starting with that to make that distinction. I think that helps, because you can be passionate about the work, but you can be one step removed from it and still deliver good stuff and be you, which I think is also the most important thing as well. Like, you being you is critical.
I wish I heard that 10 years ago.
Which bit?
Just to be removed from it a little bit. And when I worked in advertising, I remember I would put so much heart and soul into it. And then, if it shifts or it does something different, you can handle a critique, but it felt different. And when you're putting your purpose into it, it just like that would have probably helped me a whole lot of getting out of my head back in the day.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's not always the way, but I think because I have my background's in art and design, so I studied fine art and did a master's in illustration. So I understand the creative, and I can never remember the left brain, right brain thing, which side is which, the creative side and I just go left brain, right brain.
Yeah.
So I understand the creative thing. And when I'm talking to creatives or strategists, the analytical approach, the creative approach, and I think that kind of helps, having that familiarity, and also having been on the brand side, on the client side, and on the agency side. It gives you a familiarity with the process as well. I'm like, I understand that. I understand the challenge of that brief, or defining a strategy or a concept. And I think that makes it, what I do, quite relatable to people and accessible. And you're trying to get people to a safe space, a safe environment, which I think is absolutely critical. I think enabling people to feel to feel safe to express themselves, so like to have innovation without recrimination, I think is is critical.
Yeah. I like how you mentioned the analytical side of the creativity as well, because advertising as a practice, I have a background in fine arts as well. And, when you're in school, it's like creative expression, self-expression, it just flows freely. But when you're working in advertising, yeah, you bring in so much of that business brain. I mean, I learned a lot about business working in advertising and working in marketing. And I think that's unique too, because you're balancing these two parts. I think it's the right brain is creative, left brain is the business analytical side.
Yeah.
I get it wrong all the time too. I know we kind of have
remember
this intersection. But yeah, I think that's a great point. And what I hear too is when it's practicing kindness, it's not just kindness to other people, it's kindness to ourselves. And that's an important aspect that it's like, well, kindness in a workplace. Well, it starts here, and that is how it expands.
It's the overused analogy of you're on the airplane and you put your mask on first. It has to be you, and because if it's not, you're the one that's controlling how you show up in any given on any given day, and how you can kind of control the boundaries.
Yep.
And how you want to be, I think is really critical, and it has to start with you finding those moments in the day, your happy place where you want to be. I talk a lot with creatives about, and I think you and I have had the conversation before about being bored. When was the last time you were bored? And people go, well, I was sitting there watching Netflix last night. I'm like, no, that's not being bored. You were doing something. I'm literally talking about stopping, sitting still, being still, and staring out of a window for 15 minutes. And I've got some good contacts in my network, seasoned creatives like ECDs, executive creative directors, who swear by the practice. I'm going to sit and look out of a window for 15 minutes. And I think what it does when you really bring it down to that, I mean, I always say that there's a difference when it's just a few degrees when you can either be looking at a wall, or you just move slightly and you're looking out of a window, and just understanding that it's a very, very small space, but just sitting with yourself, just being, and allowing those creative juices, to get frustrated, to sink, to decompress is so important. Children need to be bored as part of their development. It's part of that process. And right now, not to go have a whole conversation about children and devices, but there's this constant stimulation, and it's adults as well. We are constantly stimulated. Yeah. Making those breaks in the day, giving ourselves a space, and just being still and quiet is something that, there's lots of practices you can do at your desk as well and things like that, or if you're working from home and things. So I think that's a really important thing about being kind to yourself.
Normalize boredom. That's huge.
Boredom is freedom.
Boredom is freedom.
T-shirt right there. So
I like it. Yes. Coined it. Well, and I think there's so much I can relate to that. I mean, I could probably talk for hours on the whole digital device thing and, my thoughts on that recently. But somebody had brought this up to me about the topic of boredom too, where even if we come up to a stoplight, we instantly are reaching for this because we have to be occupied by something. And those are these micro moments that you can reintroduce, and get comfortable with boredom. I was forced into it. I went to a silent meditation retreat a few weeks back.
Oh, wow.
This was put into a drawer. I mean, I got to say, I'm one of those people where I realize I'm always up for something, always up for trying something. And I get there, and Friday night we're talking before we go into the silence. And I was like, oh shit. Okay. So like, I can't, what if I want someone to hang out with me and do this? They're like, no, you have to be by yourself.
Oh no.
And I'm like, oh my God. But the one thing that I did that weekend is I brought my canvas and I brought my paints. And I mean, amongst other things, walking in nature. And, I sat down and I wasn't looking for inspiration on what I wanted to create here. I was just taking everything in and being okay with myself, being quiet, not being occupied. And I realized that it took me into different places with my art and almost a different understanding with that. And I guess maybe, you could say that's not really being bored if you're creating something. But I think the silence and allowing myself to be in silence was something that I don't allow myself often. And I think we're in a space where, it can be kind of uncomfortable to be alone with yourself. There's a lot of stuff that can come up.
Yeah, I think, and circumstances are different, societies are different, and the rest of it. But like going somewhere and sitting somewhere, like in a cafe, having a cup of coffee, or in a restaurant, like on your own, and not getting your device out, or like you say, waiting in line, and not getting your. And I'm like, I'm really pleased with myself. I didn't do it.
Yeah.
And I think there's a tool or technique I'd love to share with you that did we talk about finger breathing?
I think so. Was it the where you move up each of the fingers?
There's different things. There's different executions of it. But this came from we mentioned my sister earlier when we were just chatting. She teaches 4-year-olds, and I always blank what grade that is in the US. And how she brings and calms down like 20 children in a room is she does finger breathing. And it's something that I've used in my practice with my clients. And I tell the story, it's like, it's not me, I didn't create this whole thing. Well, let's see if we can do it. So if you want to just sit still, right? And maybe you're out somewhere, or you don't want people to think, well, what is that person doing? But what you do is, all we're going to do, and I'm terrible with cameras as well. So you got your finger, and you're going to trace really slowly on the outside. So you start, if you can see me here.
Yeah.
And you're breathing in. Breathe out. And what you're trying to do is just create the lightest touch and connection. And breathe out. Breathing in, breathing out. It's just a really simple. You went too fast, you see, because I haven't even finished yet.
I'm like, scribble in the middle.
And then you go back. So I want to do this workshop where I'm gonna post it, and I'm gonna do a 15-minute finger breathing workshop. And all it is going to be me just doing this. And it's just to encourage people just to stop and give them a tool to use.
How do you think that would change meetings if we did that before we broke into a meeting?
I would love it. There's also another technique that I use, which is the check-in, where for every meeting, you allow people to sit at the start of every meeting, and people just sit. And again, depending on the level of comfort, just close their eyes and they breathe in some really good, deep, nourishing breaths. And then there's a couple of questions, which is something that I use in my practice. So it's like, how are you doing today? Like right here, right now, not how are you, but like today, here. And then the second one is, say it's an hour-long meeting, status meeting. Okay, is there anything that would keep you from being present for the next 60 minutes? Okay, say there's 4 or 5 people. You go round, popcorn style, doesn't matter who starts. You say those, you allow people to speak. You don't comment, you don't giggle, you don't add. And at the end, they say, check. Once they've done their check-in, and you say, thank you for sharing. Now, what that does, it allows each member of that meeting, of that group, to literally hear their own voice. So it doesn't matter if it's a junior or a senior, doesn't matter the order that you go. So they have actually spoken. So later on in the meeting, if they want to put their hand up or contribute, they've already spoken. Sometimes people show up in a meeting and they're like, they're too timid or whatever, or someone's dominating, or it's a really good level. And the other thing is, for the person who's leading the meeting, they get a sense check. They can read the room. I need to, follow up over there, or, just get a sense. And what it does, it brings people into the space. It brings people into, and you can do it online, Zoom or whatever, as well as in person. And I've done those sessions where it's like like an hour-long status meeting. And if the check-in takes 10 minutes, that remaining 50 minutes is the most productive time, because people are in the room, they're in the space, they've shut out all the distractions. You've got a sense of where somebody is, like how centered they are, how present they are. And it's just and you always end on time. You always end the meeting on time. And if you have a little time, you can do a check out as well, which is less common, but it's like you can check out and say, how are you feeling now? And people say one word, enlightened or frustrated or whatever. But it's just a tool to bring people into that space when we are just going back to back to back with Zoom calls, which is just an unnatural way of being, especially for our brains.
Right.
Meetings shouldn't be an hour long. You can't concentrate for that long. But the check-in as a tool, combined with good old finger breathing, it really those are things that you can do on a day-to-day to help people bring it. And it's another way of being kind to yourself.
Yes.
And as a team and as a you're bringing people together versus somebody rushing in, rushing out, like, haven't prepared, don't know what we're talking about. It just allows people just to be present.
Mm-hmm. It almost reminds me.
Sorry,
it reminds me a little bit of like a light form of the L10 meetings, like in a much more mindful way. I like this approach, but I think about how many times a day when you have these Zoom meetings, depending on what your work is, sometimes you're shifting from way different projects, way different, like everything is different. This meeting, you could be on a sales call, then you're talking about a marketing initiative, then you're talking, you got to recalibrate. To go from one thing straight into the other and straight into the other, like without some form of calibration, I think this is a phenomenal way to level that.
The other thing, if I may, is the length of meetings. And I've been really encouraged. I've seen a couple of posts recently, and it just went absolutely bananas. People are like, that's amazing. There's a reason why you have a 60-minute meeting or a 30-minute meeting, and it's the software. Software is designed to, now they've broken up into 15-minute incrementals. Oh, let's have an hour meeting, but we've only got an agenda with 17 minutes worth of stuff on it. It's instinctive. You just put it in. But if you were to say you can only have, instead of a 30-minute meeting, you can have a 20-minute meeting and have 10 minutes at the end to write up notes, to give yourself some space, or a 45-minute meeting, so you give 50 minutes, same thing. Try it.
Yeah.
Try those things and you see the impact that will have, and sharpen the agenda. It's crazy that even in 2023, people are showing up without an agenda, without an aim, I used to run meetings where I'm like, the aim of this meeting is X. What will make this meeting great is ... And then you framed it up.
I like that.
You like that?
I like that. If there's one thing that would really grind my gears, it is not having an agenda for a meeting and just feeling like your time was wasted, and time is precious.
Yeah.
So I really like that idea to frame that.
Doing calculations as well. Like if it was your money.
Yeah.
So we've got like a bunch of people and they're on made up hourly rates, right? So you've got someone who's on, 2 people on $100 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
3 on 75. I've got to keep this in my head. 3 on 75, and then 4 at 50 an hour, right? So the 4 at 50, that's 200. What did I say? 3 at 75, so that's 225. So that's 425, and then 2 at 100, so that's 625. You're spending $625 just for those people to be in the room, with no agenda, with no outcome. If that was your money, if you were going to go out this weekend and go, I'm going to go shop and buy something. What are you going to buy? I don't know. I just want to spend $625 on something. Well, what does it do? I don't know. I just want to spend it. Like, you
Oh,
wouldn't
yeah.
do it. Crazy.
But it, yeah, it's a great way to put it. A great way to put it. Because there's this fine line too, where like you want to create some space for connection with teammates, but at the same time, I mean, every time I've been in those situations, everyone's like, that could have been an email. That was a
Yeah.
waste of my time. That did not
Yeah.
accomplish anything. I've got a task at hand, and based on how that meeting went, I can't accomplish anything towards this.
Yeah. And at a higher level, and this is a big one. Every meeting you have should ladder up to a strategy, which ladders up to an overall strategy, which ladders up to your 12 to 36 month plan, which ladders up to your 5 year. That's a big one. Let's just start with how showing up with a meeting with an agenda, shall we? But that's what it should be, because otherwise you're not building towards something.
Right.
And I think this is why I use those statistics like how much a meeting costs to get people's attention. But it is very much about being kind. It's about kindness, but it's also, when you do those exercises, when you do those practices, you are more efficient. So it's about well-being, and it's about efficiency as well.
Right.
Versus, oh man, I've got to go to another meeting. I have no idea, and it's a waste of my time. And like your tension, your energy levels going into that meeting versus it's 20 minutes, got a clear agenda. The outcome is this. The next step is that.
Yeah.
And breathe,
I think you right there have provided a fantastic framework for viewers that are listening to this to consider, from the kindness aspect, productivity aspect. And the thing is at the end of the day, business is always going to be about numbers. People want to understand what an ROI looks like. So when you tell somebody you're spending $650 in this meeting not being productive, I think that's going to change a lot of the way that people work. Yeah. And I think there's also an element, and I've learned this in my coaching program recently, is the interrupt and redirect. And I think that's something that can be tough. And the whole concept literally is we've got to focus. You want to keep this meeting or this person on focus. How do you, the importance of it is, redirecting back to this, but also initiating that at the beginning and just saying like, hey, if this gets off topic, I'm going to be the mediator that will help realign this. So you've established that boundary. You've established that, there's going to be somebody in this space that is going to call that out. And
like it. That's great. I've not heard that. That's really good.
I really liked it because it's not comfortable being interrupted, but I know myself, and in meetings, it's like, sometimes you want to get things off your chest. So your calibration at the beginning, level setting, can help with that, preemptively, but then just having something where it's like, hey, off topic, let's get back to this. Great.
I think also one of the things that I also encourage as a practice is the power of listening. And what you're saying, when people are just going, they're going and going and going. And all too often people are not listening to understand. They're listening to reply. Like, I'm going to wait till Angelique finishes and then blah, 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 and I can say my piece. And then someone will wait for me to finish, and then they say, no one's listening to each other, And I think that's also a really simple practice that leaders can encourage. To sit and listen and be present, and then pause and maybe ask a really good question. Clarify it. I don't understand. Can you expand on that? Not in a, I don't understand. I don't know what not in a negative kind of way, but create that culture where asking questions is established as the norm, because it helps to create, as I say, it goes back to this environment, this safe space.
Yep.
And I would love, if I may, just to, when we were talking about data points and statistics and things, the costs around toxic employees and toxic practices. So if you have somebody who gets burnt out and leaves as a result of a toxic employee, the cost to company to replace that one person is on average, $120,000 per employee. right? The lack of productivity, recruitment, onboarding, hiring, retraining, all that stuff, right? So round it up to 100. So if you have that one individual, and you can think, there's probably somebody in mind that you've worked with, or friends or whatever work with, and people look the other way and they go, oh yeah, but they're good at sales, or they're really good at the brand, or whatever it is. It's not inherent just to one department. But if that person triggers 5 people to leave, 10 people to leave, that's $1 million off your bottom line from one individual, right? Well, I always have this conversation with people, and then they talk about kindness. Oh, kindness is a weakness, and then you go, really? $1 million off the bottom line? Should we have a different conversation now?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I've experienced. I'm not going to get into my own.
But that's the thing. Everybody's got a story. But
everyone's got a story about that. I know it.
Put a number to it, and like this is what it's costing the company.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah.
Well, going back to the list, I mean, I've so enjoyed this conversation that a lot of the questions that we've talked about and scripted, we haven't gotten to, but we have so many. I love the strategies that we've discussed. I love the framework that we've discussed. I do want to ask, because you sent me over kind of a write-up of some things. And one of the things that you had and trademarked was actionable kindness. So pretty much a lot of what we've talked about here is some ways to put that into action. Mm-hmm. What else would you add to that? How can we think about that?
Well, firstly, again, the perception of kindness as a random acts of kindness. There's nothing random about kindness. It is a mindset, it's an intention. If it comes from Italian culture, right? I've got a bit more money, I'm doing well. Back in the day, I'd have put some lira down on the counter and I'm going to pay for the next coffee for the person behind. That's where it comes from. That is intentional. That's an action. I didn't randomly throw the money out of my pocket, right?
Right.
So words without action in business won't get you far. So by putting action in front of kindness, actionable kindness, it is making it more of an intent. It's making it more of an action and a mindset. Mm-hmm. And so throughout my coaching practices, I encourage people to put it in that it's a doing thing. Mm-hmm. And it's a forceful thing, and it's a force for good, and not something that is perceived as sort of soft and fluffy, because you can change. You can make a difference to somebody's day if you show up with kindness, treat them with kindness, and always remember that you're doing it for the cause, not the applause. You don't do it just to get something back.
Oh, right.
And in a nutshell, that's what actionable kindness is, to actually instill that notion and give it a bit of dynamism as well, to show the power of it, because it can kindness costs nothing, but it means everything.
Imagine how many people show up into meetings not knowing what the background of the individuals around them may be and what they're bringing to the table that day.
Yeah.
I love what you said, though. Words were nothing random. There's nothing random about kindness. It is a mindset. And I think things would look a lot differently in business if we show up with that perspective, and we show up with that kindness to both ourselves, but also the other people in this room.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's a lot about leaving the ego at the door. It's also, and I've mentioned environment a few times, creating a safe space. Really a safe environment where people can be, where they can ask questions, where they can explore. Mm-hmm. And, there was, what was her name? Dr. Amy Edmondson did this study for Google. That was the number one thing for Google. Psychological safety in the workplace was the number one thing for Google employees, And look at a company like that and what maybe they're going through some issues now, but like in terms of the dynamic way that they've actually changed the game and technology and how we use technology as well. But for them, it's so important. And ensuring that you have that safe space. Like people are like, we need to take risks. No one's going to take a risk if they don't feel safe. You know, I always say, nobody ever had a good idea whilst being chased by a tiger. Like, nobody. It just doesn't work that way, right? So if your people feel safe, if they're not going to get dinged for coming up with an idea or something doesn't work,
Yeah.
create that space. And you do that through kindness.
Amen. King of kindness right here.
That was
So
a mic
good.
drop. That wasn't a fist bump. That was a mic
Oh,
drop. So
okay. All right. Yeah, that was all right.
I
Well,
got big hands on a small screen. It might have looked like I was trying to do a fist bump with you.
I know. I was like, you got it, Neil.
Let's go.
Well, I do want to leave some space here because you have a long-awaited book coming out in the next few weeks. So would love to tell them about that and tell the folks where they can get in touch with you or, you know, where we can find more work.
Sure, I'd love to. So as you say, it is, it's a book that is a book about work, except that it's not. It's a book about you and your life, because we spend on average 90,000 hours of our lives at work. And the book is a way of actually rethinking and relooking at those words through the lens of kindness, through resilience and gratitude and wisdom. So it's so cheesy to kind of like, was it QVC? So I have this is a mock-up of the book. It's not going to come with like, where are we? A whole bunch of staples and masking tape. This is the mock-up of it.
It'd be fun if it did, though.
Pardon?
It'd be kind of fun if it did something different.
I've had a bunch of comments where people go, can you do a copy with the staples and then sign it? I'm like, yeah, okay. Not sure that's going to work. So yeah, so it's called, it's my big hands again. A Bad Hand Played Well, How to Earn Your 90,000 Hours at Work. In terms of connecting with me, my company is called Mercury Jam Coaching. That's mercuryjam.com. And I'm on LinkedIn, and my name is Neil Schambra Stevens. So that's where you can find me.
Well, I will make sure to have the links to how to contact you, how to stay in touch with you, learn about the book coming up, and just really appreciate. I mean, there's so many great nuggets that we chatted about here today. And I mean, I could talk to you for hours. So I'm sure we'll do this again.
The feeling's mutual. Thank you so much for having me, Angelique. I do appreciate it.
Take care.